Okay, we're in SolidWorks. I'm going to take a stab at trying to bring some clarity to this circular base mount assignment in Chapter 7. There are some errors in the book, so hopefully we can work through those and still get the part that we need and learn how to use these circular patterns and sketch patterns. So start by going to a new part and hit OK. My units need to be set to inches, and I'm going to go in there and just see how many decimal places. 3 decimal places should be fine. I'm going to make the front plane visible and go ahead and throw a sketch on the front plane as indicated. So first thing we want to do, sketch on that front plane, is to draw a center line from the origin, which is going to be our axis of rotation. All right. And then we're going to draw some lines here, and the tricky part is that top arc, which tends to give us a little bit of trouble. So let me start with this line right here, and I still have on center line. So I'm going to take that part off, make it a solid line. Going to draw a line across the bottom here, which is also a solid line. Let's throw some dimensions on this. This is 1.25, and there's an arc on the end of this, but I'm going to draw that as a circle to start because it's kind of a strategy that I like to employ to make sure that things have the correct relationship. So the radius of that is 0.5, so the diameter would be 1. And there's a distance from the outside of that circle to this center line. So if you remember, if you hold your shift command down, it'll let you select the outside of an arc or circle, and that has a distance of 2. I'm going to get out of my dimension tool and add a tangent relationship between these two items. And then we're going to trim out the rest of the circle that we don't need in just a moment. Now, according to the book, there's an arc up here that has a relationship to this line. It's supposed to be a vertical relationship, or the center of the arc of this circle is supposed to be coincident with that line. I'm going to make a circle here and make sure that it's coincident with the top of that line. I want this and this to be coincident, so it's below that. And now I want this line to be tangent to this. Okay. Notice that it's fully defined. Well, it's not quite fully defined. I got to trim these things out, but all of these items are black. I think we'll be all set when we trim this up. Okay, now we're fully defined. This is where the author, I think, has made a mistake, because they give you some misleading dimensions on this. Okay, and it says, I'm going to hit OK, but I'm going to take that out a few more decimal places just to show you what I mean. Okay, it says the radius of that is 5.125, which is one of the items that shows, but says don't add that dimension. And then if you look somewhere else in the book, it has a radius of 5. So I would prefer to use the geometric relations to define that. And what I mean by that is when we drew that circle, I made it coincident with this line and tangent to that, and that by definition defined its radius. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this line. So that part is good to go. It's fully defined and the dimensions are correct. We're going to do a revolve blind 360 degrees. So exit the sketch. While it's selected, go to Features, Revolve, and hit OK. So next we're going to sketch the tab. So In this case, we're going to put a sketch on the top plane. So I'm going to turn that guy off so it doesn't confuse me. And I'm going to go to the top plane, create a sketch, look normal to that. And we're right on the top here. And this, we have this arc and this arc down below. So we want to make sure that we are picking the right one of these lines to work off of here. So this says an arc with a radius. It's coincident with the origin. Let's make sure that that's correct. I'm just going to draw another one right on top of that. That's not the one we're looking for. So I'm just going to make a new one because that's deceiving. So if it has a radius of 1.5, that would be 3. So that's the line that we want. Now that may well be the bottom one. I believe it is, because it lines up with that. But it's deceiving because we're looking at it from the top. Another way to do that might be to just view it from the bottom as we're drawing. If I look normal too, this time it's going to flip it over, I think. There we go. All right, now we're looking at it from the bottom. Okay, we're going to draw a center line in from here. Make sure that's horizontal. There's an arc on there, but again, I'm going to draw that as a circle because it's just easier for me to do it that way. So it shows a radius of 5.75. So you can just type in, 0.575 times 2, give us the diameter for that. The center of that from the origin is 2.5. And we have a couple of lines and where's it, that are 1/2 inch apart. So we can draw some lines here from here and make them a little long, and here. Now those lines are 1/2 inch apart, so I can type that in as 0.5, but they may not, notice that they're not centered around that line. So there's a couple ways to straighten that out. We could just put a 1/4 inch dimension here, or we could come in and select those 3 items and say that we want them to be symmetric, which is a nice way to do it. All right, and notice that turns those items black. We have a sketch radius, or sketch fillet rather, of 0.25 in here. So we could come up to sketch fillet and type in 0.25 for our radius. And that doesn't want to do that. Let's trim that out first, and that might help us out. So I'm going to go to trim, get rid of the items we don't need here. Let's try that sketch fillet again. There we go. I can just click right on the point now, and I'm okay. So now I have a fully defined sketch for that. If we take a look at this, that belongs on that plane that we talked about, which was the top plane, I believe. I'm going to turn it on for a moment just so you make sure your sketch is on the top plane. And that's that circle that we, oh, I should have trimmed that up. Let me go back to that sketch for a moment and go to trim, get rid of those guys because that's the only part we need. This line just happens to be a line that was from our previous revolve command. So I drew it in separately. You could have used it, could have offset entities. I don't think it mentioned that either way. All right, so we're going to do extrude this tab. So I'm going to go to exit our sketch, go to, while it's selected, I'm going to go to extruded boss. And instead of blind, I'm going to go up to surface. And I'm going to see if I can select this face right here. I think that's correct. All right, that's looking good so far. I'm going to go ahead and hit save because we've got some good work done. All right, and I'll put that in my, what chapter is this? Chapter 7. Actually, put it in my chapter 7. I'm just going to put it on my desktop right now. What is this thing called? Circular base. All right. Moving along. Okay, for our next sketch, we're going to be working on the front plane, which is going to allow us to do this counter bore. So I'm going to look normal to that, create a sketch on that plane, and I'm going to change my view so I can see in here like this. Looks like it makes sense to start with a center line that is coincident with here, but it's also supposed to be on a midpoint relation. So we'll get to that in just a second. Draw my center line. All right. Back to a straight line command now, and draw this shape for my counter bore. Close this up. Okay. So now I need to put some dimensions on this. So the height of this guy is 0.5. Overall height is 0.8. If you remember, if we use the center line and go beyond it, it gives us a virtual diameter, and that's supposed to be 0.625. And this guy is 0.375. All right. We need to give some heights to this guy, so oops, actually I'm good with that. So the book leaves this a bit vague, but this feature is supposed to be centered within this feature. So we could do that by, let me just look normal too again. If we know the diameter of this part, we can put a dimension in from here to our center line. And we know that that was 1 inch, I believe, so this should be 0.5. And now we end up with a fully defined sketch, and when we rotate that, it should be cutting it out of the center of that. So let's go ahead and exit our sketch, and we're going to do a revolve cut under features. I've got my sketch selected, revolve cut. Oops, what do we have? Something's unhappy here. Oh, I need to draw a line down the middle of that. Let me straighten that out. Exit that sketch. Excuse me, edit that sketch. I do. This line down the middle must not be collinear with that guy. All right. I think we're okay now. Let's try it again. Revolve cut. Select our sketch. Clear that. It's my line of rotation. Select contours. There we go. I think we were actually okay all along. That looks good. I'm going to save the video, end the video at this point and call this part 1 of this, and then I'll make another video that allows us to draw the triangle, revolve all these features, and put the fillets in.